Okay, we're now on the record. Council agenda, Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, regular Township Council meeting of February 19th, 2019.
Posting of notice. An adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Law by filing the notice in the office of the Township Clerk and by posting the meeting notice on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building on December 19th, 2018, where it has remained posted since that date. A legal notice appeared in the Daily Record and the North Star Ledger on December 27, 2018, and was forwarded by fax to other local newspapers and local radio stations on December 19, 2018. Council meetings are videotaped and aired on Public Access Channel 21 at 7 p.m. Sundays and Wednesdays, and are also available for viewing at www.parsippany.net.
Please rise for the flag salute. Peterson, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. DePiero?
Here.
Ms. Grignani?
Present.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Ms. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Carriffy?
Here.
Okay, also in attendance are CFO Ann Cucci, Mayor Michael Soriano, Business Administrator Keith Kasmark, Township Attorney Jim Lott, and Township Clerk Colette Madden. Council President, we have a quorum. You may begin.
Thank you. Upcoming meetings, March 5th, 2019 at 7 p.m. agenda meeting. March 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m. regular meeting. Approval of minutes, agenda meeting January 8th, 2019, regular meeting January 22nd, 2019. Motion to approve the above minutes made by myself.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Mr. DePiero. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, presentations, reports. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Before I go on to my presentation, a bit of a public service announcement. If you've been paying attention to the weather, we are expecting a storm late tomorrow morning, probably early in the afternoon. But the part that I want to really announce to you is let you know that if you haven't heard already, the Board of Education is going to have an early dismissal tomorrow. You're going to have to check the schedules online for which school gets out at which time, depending on your child or grandchild. Also, the Catholic schools, I'm aware of, the All Saints Academy, they're closing at 12 o'clock tomorrow. So just please be aware of that, and please be careful. Please be safe. Bless you all. At our last council meeting, I believe it was Council Member Peterson who asked the question about the water view, the wall, or as it's jokingly called, the Great Wall of Parsippany, a wall that's really not that great. I'd like to read this from our lawyer, who is had this information. Since the last council meeting, we've initiated a legal investigation of the Waterview wall collapse and related stormwater issues. We are in the middle of a fact-gathering process. We are reviewing the Waterview erosion control plan submitted to the Soil Conservation District. The district appears to have demanded that the developer undertake a series of corrective actions. We are communicating with the district to determine the status of each corrective action and whether it plans to initiate any enforcement proceedings. We expect to have an additional update at the next council meeting. And again, if you have any more questions about this, please direct them to my office. Okay, and I'm on top of this one. Okay, we are on top of this one. This one is very important to us. Now, tonight, we're going to present to the Township Council the 2019 municipal budget as prepared by my administration. I'm extremely pleased that this budget is being presented so early this year. As a matter of fact, this is the earliest that anyone here at Town Hall can remember the budget book being presented to the Council. This budget process started last fall with department-by-department budget meetings being held throughout the month of October. Myself, the business administrator, our CFO, and our administrative staff sat through hours of line-by-line budget reviews. We discussed operating budgets, salaries, and wages, creative ways to make cuts, eliminating redundancies, and ways to enhance revenue, all with the taxpayers of Parsippany Troy Hills in mind. As the budget began to take shape right after the first of the year, we stood at a nearly 10% increase over the 2018 budget. We worked as a team to make additional cuts, taking into account and comparing expenditures over the last few years. It was a challenging process. Unfortunately for the taxpayers of our township, history plays a significant role here. Our budget is still suffering from the 0% tax increases of 2017. For political reasons, the prior administration, the Township Council, voted for no tax increase when the township was not in the financial position to do so. In talking to municipal financial advisors, it will take us up 4 years to make up for that decision. Making matters worse was the Township Council's decision to reduce last year's budget to the 2.86% increase which was adopted. Averaged out over 2 years, that is about 1.43% increase per year, while union contracts call for raises well in excess of 2%. The math simply doesn't work. The robbing Peter to pay Paul gimmicks of taking money from the water and sewer utility budgets must end. Unfortunately, we can only start somewhere. Tonight, the ramifications of that practice will be clearly shown to the council. Surpluses are down. There are no gimmicks. No quick short-term fixes like half-year salaries or one-shot revenues, but is rather a responsible first step to ensuring our financial future. I will now turn it over to Mr. Kazmark, our business administrator, for the formal presentation. BA?
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor. When I was hired here in Parsippany, and I started on October 1st, the one request I had of the mayor was that we would have a relationship where I would be able to tell him what he needed to hear and tell the people of Parsippany what they needed to hear rather than what they might have wanted to hear. So tonight, as the mayor indicated, tonight is a first step in trying to restore the fiscal health of the township of Parsippany, Troy Hills. And you'll see tonight how budget surpluses, past decisions when it comes to municipal tax increases, play a role in the formation of the 2019 spending plan. Let me begin by explaining that within our municipal budget that you can find online, there are 4 different budgets. One is the current fund, which is basically all of the operations of the municipality, excluding sewer, water, and the Knoll Golf utility. They have standalone budgets within the municipal budget. We'll start with the current fund. Current appropriations for the operating budget for the township of Parsippany stand this year at $74.5 million. The reserve for uncollected taxes stands at 1.8. Debt service stands at 9.3. Salaries account for about $30,400,000. Budget revenue, that's money that we collect by all other means other than taxation. Construction permit fees, court revenue, marriage licenses, other fees and permits collected by the municipal clerk's office, and all the municipal departments. Our budget revenue stands at $25.3 million. The amount to be raised by taxation stands at $46.3 million. Budget impacts. The largest increase to our municipal budget for 2019 is the police salaries and wages line item. That increase stands at $868,000. That's a 7% increase for the majority of police officers who are in that line item. The pension increase, which is a non-negotiable item, that is a bill that comes in from the Division of Pensions at the state level, for both PERS, which stands for the Public Employment Retirement System, that's our civilian employees, and PFRS, which stands for Police and Fire Retirement System, stands at just under $800,000 as the increase. Our debt service increase is $726,000. Debt service is the amount that needs to be paid in 2019 to pay off prior capital projects that the mayor and council chose to bond for in past budgets. Blue collar salaries and wages increasing just above $300,000. That's a 3.5% increase. And the 5-year emergency for retirement payouts results in a $150,000 increase. Social Security payments, again, a non-negotiable item, up $100,000. Tipping fees for solid waste collections, up $100,000. The increase for the reserve for uncollected taxes is $70,000. The radio communication costs in our contract with the county for radios as we build out our own radio communication system. Last year, that was only partially budgeted for one part of the year. This year, based on having to contract with the county for the full year, there is an increase of $51,000. And finally, due to the state law increasing the minimum wage that was passed by the legislature and adopted by the governor, our part-time line items need to be adjusted by a $50,000 increase. White-collar salaries and wages, we've budgeted a 2% increase for the white-collar employees. I will tell you that we did discuss reducing that amount. However, the mayor and the administration made the determination that we do not want to create different classes of employees here in Parsippany. And as you saw on the first slide, under budget impacts, the police increase is 7%. The blue collar increase is 3.5%. The mayor and the administration did not want to leave any non-union, non-bargaining employees behind by reducing the 2% cost of living increase, which amounts to $216,000. The increase to the public library, beyond the statutory amount, which we're required to collect and provide to the library, stands at $367,644. The majority of that increase has to do with health insurance for the library employees, the purchase of books and materials, and to provide Sunday hours at the different branches of the library. A new program this year that has been requested both by the administration and members of the council is the TNR program. This is a trap, neuter, release program to manage the feral cat population here in Parsippany Troy Hills. The funding for that will be a $25,000 increase to the 2019 budget. Payroll processing and grant writing equal a $15,000 increase each. They were not budgeted for in 2018, so they will increase for 2019. The one note I want to make on the grant writer is that last year, Millennium Strategies, who we contracted with, and they were only contracted for a portion of the year, brought in over $77,000 in grant applications, or in grant awards, I should say. However, the pending amount of money in outstanding grant applications exceeds $1.5 million. So there is a huge benefit to having the grant writer on staff. So municipal budgets are really about priorities. And tough decisions need to be made when you put together these spending plans. The administration this year decided that we would grant no merit increases to employees, which has been past practice under prior administrations here in Parsippany. There are no planned promotions, and there are no planned title changes. Now, the word planned is important. If in the month of April, let's say, we have a sergeant retire from the police department, we have an obligation to fill that position if the chief deems it necessary in order to properly supervise our police officers, as an example. But as of now, as we present this budget tonight on February 19th, there are no planned promotions or planned title changes. The master plan costs, that process was started in 2018, we initially tried to budget for the master plan all in 2019. We've since decided to spread that cost out over a 5-year period, which is permitted by state law. There is no net increase to the operations at the PAL. The O&E costs will be provided to the PAL as an annual donation. As it stands now, we pay some of the PAL's bills. We are going to restructure how we fund the PAL and we will provide them with an annual donation. They will not lose any funding, but they will be able to keep their own books as a result of that annual donation. The best news in this entire slide presentation tonight is that the township has gained $40 million in new ratables through assessments. That is very good news, and without that, the end result of this spending plan would not be as favorable as it is tonight. However, I caution the mayor and council, and I caution the taxpayers of Parsippany that this is not something that we will realize again in 2020. Based on all of the projections by our tax assessor, Dan Cassis, this $40 million in new ratables will sustain itself next year, but we will not see a jump as we have in 2019. We've cut the legal budget by an additional $10,000, which is now down to $690,000, which is down from $802,000, which was budgeted for in 2017. We've moved some parks and forestry and some recreation expenses over to the Green Acres Reserve Fund, which takes some onus off of the operating budget for those departments in the current fund. So what I've done here is we've broken down the mandatory increases versus the discretionary increases. As I mentioned earlier, police salaries are the largest increase in this budget. It amounts to 22.4% of the total increase. Pension costs amount to 20.5% of the total increase. Debt service amounts to 18.7% of the total increase. So at this point, we've already exceeded 2%. Blue collar salaries and wages amounts to just under 8%. The emergency 5-year for retirement payouts equates to 3.8%. Social Security increase 2.5%. Tipping fees for solid waste collection 2.5%. The reserve fund collected taxes 1.8%. The radio contract 1.3%, and minimum wage 1.28%. So the total increase that's mandatory, that the mayor and council have no discretion to effectuate any change in these numbers, amounts to $3.2 million. That's 83.2% of the total tax increase. On the discretionary side, we have the public library, and again, this is the amount beyond the statutory amount that we have to provide the library to operate. Under discretionary, 9.5% of the discretionary increases, 9% of the total tax increase, this is a continuation from the prior slide, equates to 9.5%. White collar salaries and wages, this is the 2% for all the non-union folks, all the folks who are not involved in a collective bargaining contract, 5.5. Trap neuter release, 0.6. Payroll processing, 0.39. Grant writer, 3.9. And the daycare center, an additional 10,400. That's 0.27. That's a result of a reduction, or a loss, I should say, of a United Way grant, which helped operate the daycare center on Baldwin Road. We fund them just about $50,000 a year due to the lack of a grant. It was requested by council that we consider the $10,400 to make up for the grant. Total increase in discretionary spending, if you want to call this discretionary, $650,000. It's only 16.7% of the total tax increase. So when you look at the mandatory and discretionary spending increases, mandatory is 3.2, discretionary is just under 650, to total increase of 3.8, almost 3.9 million. This slide is, in my opinion, the most important slide in the presentation tonight. And this talks about the current fund surplus, the operating expenses of the municipality, and the surplus that we have. The current fund surplus at the end of 2018 was $5.6 million. The amount of that surplus that we will use to offset a tax increase in 2019 equates to 3.990. That is the same amount of surplus that was used to offset the tax increase in the 2018 budget. Now, talk to any municipal auditor, go to any municipal finance class down at the League of Municipalities, and they will tell you that a healthy surplus goal for a municipality this size, with just shy of a $75 million budget in the current fund, is between 10 and 15%. So in real dollars, that equates to 7.5 to 11.2 million. And as you can see, we ended 2018 with only 5.6. So based on healthy budgeting practices, we have to rebuild the surplus here in Parsippany. So what are our long-term structural budget recommendations moving forward? Well, one, we have sent a letter and I have spoken personally to the superintendent of schools. Currently, we do not charge the Board of Education for trash and solid waste disposal. The total cost of the disposal aspect of that is about $75,000. That does not include labor costs for sanitation workers, does not include maintenance on trucks and vehicles, and all of the ancillary costs that go along with collecting trash, but it is just the disposal costs. We've sent a letter indicating to the Board of Education that we would like them to begin to budget that $75,000 in their school board budget in order to offset the costs to the township for disposal of trash. We're looking to work to expand our paid ambulance service to neighboring municipalities. Our paid ambulance squad has the ability to provide services. We have the capacity to do so. I've had many conversations with Chief Snook about this. We are going to actively go out and visit our neighboring municipalities to see if we can better offer this service to them. And obviously, we bill the insurance companies of the patients that the ambulance service provides, so we would be able to expand our pool of revenue relative to emergency services. We're looking to adjust fee schedules to be more competitive with other Morris County municipalities, including the construction department, housing, fire prevention, health, animal control, and recreation. Some of these fee schedules have not been updated in over a decade. We, in many cases, are not competitive with our neighbors. And my directive to each of the department heads or division heads was to do a comparison to all the neighboring municipalities, including some our size, and come back with recommendations as to how we could alter our fee schedule to remain competitive. I've asked Chief Miller and Captain Weiner to develop a plan to bring surrounding municipalities into our radio communication system, which is currently being developed. Prior administration made a priority decision to build out a $10 million radio communication system. We have the capacity and the ability to provide those services to neighboring municipalities. We've already had some administrators and some police chiefs in neighboring municipalities reach out to us to inquire about this service. But we are going to have to seriously consider entering into shared services agreements and hopefully provide better service at less cost than what they're currently receiving from other agencies. We will look this year to modify the open space trust fund allocation by ballot referendum in the November 2019 election to allow for improvements and development of parks and fields rather than acquisition. The reason for that recommendation is twofold. One, the council made a decision not long ago to rejoin the Highlands Council. And number two, the amount of open space to acquire in Parsippany has been reduced greatly by acquisition and by other areas and tracts being developed. So the idea here is to change the allocation, allow Parks and Forestry and Recreation to use open space as part of their operating expense line item, and reduce the money that has been put aside to purchase properties for preservation. And finally, we need to reduce our dependency on the sewer and water utility surplus. This 2019 budget reduces the use of sewer and water surplus by $50,000 each. In my humble opinion, it's not enough, but in order to not continuously strap taxpayers, that was the amount that we could reduce it by that was fair and reasonable. So now we're going to talk about the sewer utility budget. Current appropriations in the sewer utility, $16.7 million. Debt service, $2.5 million. Salaries, $3.8, almost $3.9 million. Budget revenue, $15.1. And the surplus at the end of 2018 was $7.8. This is the second most important slide in the presentation tonight. In 2012, the sewer utility budget surplus stood at $15.2 million. The column on the right side is what the town during those years used to offset the current fund budget. So back in 2012, we were transferring $550,000 to offset the tax increase in the current fund. As we stand at the end of 2018, that surplus is down to $7.8 million, and there are a number of reasons for that reduction. First, as you can see on the right-hand side, we went from using just over $500,000 to offset the municipal budget, the municipal operating budget, to in 2016 and 2017 using $2.5 million to do so. In 2018, we used $2.3 million to do so. 2019, we are proposing to use $2,250,000. We must wean off the use of sewer and water utilities in order to approve a municipal budget. What I can say is this. You will see in this slide that 2018 was not a good year for any of our municipal utilities. We had almost 80 inches of rain in 2018. We can't predict the weather. The effect on the sewer utility budget was that stormwater infiltrates our sewer system. It increases flows, it increases cost, and it reduces the bottom line. When it comes to the water utility, when it rains 80 inches in a calendar year, people are not watering their lawns, they're not washing their cars, they're not filling their pools, because Mother Nature's doing it for them. And when it comes to the Knoll Golf utility, as Councilman DiPiero has reminded me a number of times, it rained just about every weekend in the year 2018, and it crimped his golf game, as it did many others. The water utility budget, current appropriations $9.4 million, debt service just over $1 million, salaries $2.4 million, budget revenue $8 million, surplus at the end of 2018 $4.9. The township has not tapped the water utility nearly as hard in the past to offset municipal taxes as it has the sewer utility. But you will notice that in 2012, while we started with a $4 million surplus, it went up. And in 2015 and 2016, we were at 6.1, 6.6, and then in 17, 6.3. The impact on the weather and stable rates for the water utility in 2018 brought us to 4.9 million at the end of last year. As you can see, in 2017, 2018, the water utility surplus was tapped to offset taxes, $700,000 in the first year, $655,000 in the second year. This year, we reduced that amount to be used by $50,000 because, quite frankly, folks, if we continue to use these amounts of money, at least in sewer and likely in water, in 4 or 5 years, these are going to be tapped out. No pun intended. Knoll Golf Utility, current appropriations $4 million, debt service $817, salaries $1.4, budget revenue $3.1, surplus at the end of 2018 $1.3. That's an estimated amount, and it also is only $1.3 million because we did cancel some operating expenses to move it over into surplus heading into 19. The golf utility is not used or has not been used to offset the municipal budget. That's why there's no right-hand column. But as we stand today, the surplus is $1.3 million, as mentioned in the previous slide. So what structural budget recommendations do we have on the utility side? One, we need to adjust water rates. They have not been adjusted since 2010, and if we continue to tap the water surplus and the sewer surplus in the manner that we have, in 4 years, those surpluses have the potential to be depleted. So the recommendation is to do a 5-year ordinance with a 2% adjustment, which is in line with every budget recommendation that the state has made to the municipalities. The cap is at 2%. We try to keep the tax levy at 2%. We're mandated to keep appropriations at 2%. There's no reason that water rates should not keep up and be adjusted by 2%. The other factor that we have to take into account with regard to water is that our last council meeting 2 weeks ago, we had a report from our water superintendent about the condition of the infrastructure here in Parsippany. We had 9 water breaks in a 14-day period, 1 major water break under Route 10. We also have water towers in Parsippany that are going to need to have significant capital improvements made in the next 2 or 3 years, including the draining and painting of both the interior and exterior of that infrastructure. I can tell you from experience that you're probably talking about, at minimum, $2 million for each water tower that needs to be drained and repainted both inside and out. When it comes to the water utility and the sewer utility, we should be utilizing the surpluses in those accounts to be able to fund capital projects without taking the utility and the township further into debt. That is a healthy budget projection. We need to adjust sewer rates based upon the flat rate modification. I currently have our sewer superintendent, Joe Beckmeyer, tremendous experience, tremendous knowledge, along with our township attorney, Jim Lott, looking into how to best adjust the sewer rates. Some municipalities put more onus on collections from commercial entities because they truly are the ones that contribute to the wear and tear on the sewer infrastructure. Go to any restaurant, they'll talk to you about fat, oil, and grease being deposited into the sewer system throughout the state. That's where the real expense comes from. It's not from the single family Cape Cod, 2 or 3 people living in it. It's from our commercial restaurants and our other commercial facilities, and we're going to look at how we're going to recommend adjusting those rates. The Knoll Golf Utility, the rates were adjusted in December of 2018, so there's no action with regard to that utility. Local municipal tax rate. Now we're going back to the current fund, off of the utilities. 2019 budget is $39,000 under the tax levy cap, and under the appropriations cap by $2.6 million. The 2019 assessed value of the township is $7.2 million. The 2018 assessed value of the township was, billion. Thank you. 2019 assessed value, $7,244 million. 2018 assessed value, $7,203,000. And that right there, that delta, is the $40 million in new ratables that I discussed during the earlier slide, which again, based on the projection of the tax assessor's office, we will not see a jump like that again in 2020, or for that matter, in 2021. Municipal taxes are projected for 2019 at 64 cents. 2018 municipal actual 61.1. So the change is 0.029 increase per $100 of assessed valuation over the 2018 tax rate. The 2019 average home in the township is valued at $310,736. So all of these numbers are based off an assessment of a house at 310. Municipal taxes, 2018, $1,899. It would be under this budget for 2019, $1,988. That's an increase of $89.53 for the entire year. That breaks down to $7.46 per month. It's a municipal increase of 4.72%. The proposed property tax breakdown for 2019, just under 66% would go to the school. That part of the pie is in orange. Just over 21% would be the municipal portion. That's shaded in blue. Just over 10% would be the county portion. That's shaded in purple. And then you have the municipal open space, library, and the county open space, which all hover just above and below 1%. The budget hearings for this year, scheduled for February 26th. That's a week from tonight at 6:30. We'll hear from our department heads both then and also on March 2nd at 11 a.m. That's a Saturday. Budget hearing will extend from 11 to approximately 2 o'clock. The administration is proposing that the budget be introduced at the March 16th, 2019 council meeting at 7 p.m. and have public hearing and final adoption on April 16th, 2019, also at 7 p.m. Council President, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Okay, Township Council, council members, have anything?
Not at this time.
No, not at this time.
Township Attorney, Mr. Lott?
Only for closed session, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Business Administrator, Mr. Kazmark, anything else?
No, sir. I have something prior to the one ordinance, though. But
Okay,
get to that.
Township Clerk, Mr. Madden?
No report at this time, Council President. Thank you.
Okay, Township Offices, Committees, Reports, anything?
Nothing.
Okay. Okay, bids taken, January 24th. SCADA system improvements, January 30th, reconstruction of Edgewood Court. February 1st, Knoll West Country Club irrigation system replacement. February 1st, rehabilitation services for wells 12, 17, and 19. February 14th, laboratory improvement project. To be taken, February 21st, reconstruction of Sandra Drive and Sandra Court. Quotations, proposals, qualifications, none. Public hearing. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to open up the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. DePiero,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, the floor is open, but I would like to make a note. If you're going to be commenting about Stanberry, Stanberry is on for a public hearing on the agenda, so please reserve the comments for then. Anything else, you can go ahead and speak. Thank you.
Okay, if you do come forward, please state your name and address. You'll be given 5 minutes.
Bob Bars, 807 Park Road. I'm here to speak about the Henry Street situation. First of all, I'd like to, number one, thank Mr. Lott and the Township Clerk for getting back to a tray and letting us know that Habitat for Humanity, whatever they're going to do at this point in time, they will need a council vote, which is a good thing. On our behalf, at least we feel that way. I'd also like to ask if there's anything that came out of that meeting that you would like to share with myself or any of the other individuals that are here tonight from the Henry Street area. We'd like to hear it. I'd like to just say that when I initially spoke with Habitat for Humanity, they kind of implied that if the deal did not go through the way they wanted it, that then they were relieved of their responsibility and they would not own the property, which then it would deed back to Newbridge Services. And from what I understand, the amount of money that Parsippany has put into it, it might revert back to Parsippany. If that's the case, I'd like to, my neighbor Trey, who's been doing most of the emails, is away. He's out of state. He's out in California tonight. Couldn't be here, and he's very sorry for not being here, but it was a very important business trip that he had to make. So I am going to speak on his behalf, in that he is willing to buy the property at the price that Parsippany Newbridge Services, that Newbridge Services.
You guys here in the back? Not really. Can't even hear in the front. Well, I'd expect you to say it. Is that it?
Okay.
Better?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. He is willing to buy the property at the price that Newbridge Services paid for the property. We were told back in November that Parsippany has sunk $114,000 or $116,000 into helping Newbridge Services. We asked for a breakdown of that, which we never got. He is willing to reimburse Parsippany that amount of money if it can be stated exactly what that amount of money was for. So, from that aspect, it's kind of a win-win situation for everybody, in that all the 15 houses that surround that piece of property that don't want anything done with it, okay, he's not a builder. He does not intend to build on the lot. All he will do is, at his own expense, will take down the small building that's on the property, which is the only thing we've been trying to do for 12 years. So he will do that, and everybody wins. As far as I'm concerned, Habitat for Humanity can go find another 12 to 15 houses somewhere else in Parsippany that are already there and need some work. They don't have to go into a wooded lot and completely tear it down, a lot that has no sewer or water on it, and it would be an extremely expensive proposition to build anything there.
Sir, 1 minute.
Pardon,
Yeah,
1 minute? So from that aspect, I'm just throwing that out there. We would obviously have to have a meeting, and he would like to have a meeting with everybody, the mayor and the council, and, you know, I mean, put it this way, Habitat for Humanity has not reached out to any of us as to what we want to do, what we would like to have them do. Now, my personal opinion is, I don't want a thing built on that property. It's a nice wooded lot. Maybe somebody else might say, well, one house is one thing. Well, to build one house on a wooded lot that's 100 yards from the nearest sewer or water is an extremely expensive proposition. Now, I know Habitat for Humanity gets free everything. Free labor, free electricians, free plumbers, free architects, free everything. But they can go do that somewhere else on a house that already exists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Lott, has Habitat for Humanity now out of the picture completely?
No, they are not. My understanding is that they're still under contract with Newbridge to purchase the property.
Through your council president.
So then the report that we just heard is not accurate.
Well, the property is currently owned by Newbridge.
I know that. We paid for the property.
We did. Out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I would, not that I like to sue nonprofits, but we bought that property for Newbridge to have a group home. The purpose that we provided the funds for that group home is being diverted to something else. Now, I would like to sue and get our money back, because they're not using it for the purpose we gave them the money for.
Right. Well, the property, as I explained earlier, is the subject of an affordable housing deed restriction. And if Newbridge wishes to essentially cancel its project, it would have to come back to the township in order for us to do that, because they are under agreement with us to build they are under agreement with us to build a group home there.
Can you, I'm sorry, I need you guys to repeat that because the people in the back did not hear, and I'm going to advise everybody to speak into the mics.
Can I be
only
heard?
because we have.
Am I heard in the back?
You guys here in the back?
Is that better?
Yeah. Okay.
So as I explained, the property is currently the subject of an affordable housing deed restriction, and there is an agreement between the township and Newbridge that obligates them to build a group home. So if there's going to be a change in that, they're going to have to come back to us and ask to be excused from the agreement.
Well, that would have to take place, I'm trying to understand the sequence here. That would have to take place after Habitat for Humanity declines to purchase the property.
That's correct. There's a contract of sale, I believe, that is contingent upon Habitat getting all necessary approvals, including approval from the township.
Well, they're not gonna get that. So, I'm just wondering what's taking so long for Habitat for Humanity to yield.
I believe that Habitat Humanity, based on the meeting that I was at, asked for some additional time to see if they could work out a successor project. And we have not heard back from Habitat.
Okay.
And through you, council president, when we left that meeting, we had a commitment from Blair Bravo, from Habitat for Humanity, that they would conduct their own independent meeting with the residents who surround the property to see if they could come up with some sort of proposal that would be acceptable to both Habitat and the residents in the adjoining area. So and I did follow up with Blair. I sent her an email yesterday. I have not heard back.
And they have not contacted the residents.
As of an email I received, I want to say last week, from the residents inquiring about the status, no.
As of tonight, no.
Correct. Nobody has picked back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. William LaVista, 770 Park Road. I live on Park Road. Since I've gotten back from California, I purchased a home in '77, moved to California for a while for business, came back. Since I've been there, I've seen 5 major developments have occurred. My latest is Canterbury Estates, where there's blasting in the area. It's basically a quarry operation. There's been rock crushing and blasting. I mean, this is the last vestige, is the Henry Street property, of any open space whatsoever at the west end of Park Road. I mean, when I heard it was going to be an apartment complex, I was stunned. I don't know what it takes. I mean, there is virtually, to me, the entire area has been totally overdeveloped. The last area before Canterbury Estates was the only wildlife we had left since I've been here. I mean, it's incredible. To indoor blasting in a residential area, I don't know how it could have been approved by this town. I mean, it was just incredible. It has been going on since early 2000, and that we've endured the noise. It has been incredible over the entire valley. And I'm home every day now, having been retired. It's just beyond belief. And the traffic that has been put on Park Road on top of the through traffic is incredible. When I lobbied here for 5 years to get the speed humps on Park Road, I assumed stupidly that they would be on the straightaway, but they've been placed on the 1.7 mile stretch. So it really has had an effect on the traffic, which is quieting the traffic. But as far as expectations go, it has not slowed the traffic down. When I got a copy of the police report, I mean, 65 mile an hour was reported on the fact sheet. What is it? 15% of cars were doing over 42 miles an hour. I mean, we've been complaining about this since I moved here in '77. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, Henry Street property is the last vestige of open space in the entire area. So I hope the council would consider that and what the future plan may be. Thank you.
Mr. LaVista, if I can just ask you to sign in, please.
I did.
Oh, you did? Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm here about my concerns for Route 46 as a corridor for pedestrians. In March 20th, 2018, the council approved a resolution to get a grant to study
Name and address,
the
Mary, please.
Ah, darn it all. Everybody knows where I live. 273 Marcella Road in Lake Parsippany. Duh. Well, anyhow, they applied for a grant to study the Route 46 corridor for safety reasons. And I'm just curious to find out what that study revealed, because between Waterview and Cherry Hill Road, where the construction for the R&D project is, I wanted to know if that area was considered, because people do walk that corridor, and I was always concerned that they would put sidewalks there. But when the building started on the Great Wall, which I call the Bastille Wall because it doesn't even deserve the word Great Wall, because China built their Great Wall and it still lasts. So I'm curious to know if that area was considered, and if it was considered with a wall that is unstable. To me, that is not only a safety concern for the pedestrians who walk there, but walk along it, but also the cars that travel in that lane. And there was also another ordinance introduced November 17th, 2015 on that specific retail commercial district for the Waterview area. And the specifics on how the front on Route 46 was supposed to look was pretty well defined if you look it up. I mean, the landscape, the buffers so that you wouldn't see, the complex itself. It would blend in with the environment and the area, because a lot of trees did go down. And some of those trees were supposed to be saved, and I don't think one of them were ever saved. And I was wondering whether during the course of that construction, all the suggestions made by Mr. Snikes were observed and abided by. Because we're talking about 50-foot buffer, but then there was other considerations where, if it's too steep slope, we can put in the retaining wall at 20 at the discretion of the builder. But there still was buffer between that wall and that fence and Route 46 when it came to the landscape. And there is no room for a sidewalk, and there is no room for the proper landscape. That was, I always thought, going to happen. But the way you look at it now, it can't. And let me tell you, if the wall keeps going the way it's going because they put berm where the first one fell, which that is now a very big steep slope, I mean, and the wall falls, even if you had a sidewalk, hello, pedestrian, you're not safe. So I really think that the township needs to pay more attention to that area. And then the other thing of is we do give a lot of tax breaks out. I mean, there's UPS, there's Tevia, there's the one we're not supposed to talk to until the public meeting, and yet you come with this budget, and I look at some of those projects and I said, okay, you're going to give the trash to the Board of Ed, but I'm still paying the Board of Ed's trash tax. I'm still paying money for that tax. You ain't saving me anything.
Mary,
you
one-
just
1 minute.
transferred it.
Mary, 1 minute.
Okay. So, I mean, this is my tax dollar that just goes scooching around. Yes, thank you, it rained so much because I didn't have to pay so much of a water bill. You know, I need to save money too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Homiak from Lake Hiawatha. Speaking of national disasters, I'm here to say that North Beverwick, I'd like to declare it a municipal disaster. A community is a network of social and economic relations in the places where those relations interact. Therefore, the business interests along North Beverwick are not in keeping of the interests of the community or any semblance of a pride in Parsippany. Question: are those businesses along North Beverwick members of the Chamber of Commerce? Now, Chamber of Commerce doesn't write laws for business, but the businesses are subject to laws and ordinances and best practices, especially in sanitation. You walk the length and the breadth of North Beverwick. It's heavily trashed, heavily littered, all from the various business interests as a collective. Therefore, they should be made responsible as a collective for cleaning their immediate spaces at least once a day. And we're talking about stormwater. You can't talk about stormwater without talking about street cleaning, which includes parking lots, sidewalks. It's all, you don't clean that, especially with the rain and snow we've been having, it all goes down the drain. So you have to have an ecology and an economy, even at a basic level, in a place where you buy and sell things, especially with all the plastic and everything else. But the municipal authority is not proactive, it's reactive. It depends on, I guess, people like me. You call, you make a complaint, they go there. There could be a mess over here and a mess over there, but if I complain about the mess over here, they don't see the mess over there. Then they go back to the office. We have all these departments, they need to get more proactive. We pay them a salary to do a job. If the basic person doesn't care, we pay them to care. That's where I want my tax money to go. And there's certain spots up there that never get any better, they always stay the same. All right, I have a couple of questions besides the one about whether the businesses up there belong to the Chamber of Commerce. Are we gonna get updates on a regional master plan conformance that we began? I'd like to hear updates from the council every now and then of how we're progressing with the regional conformance. As far as trash goes, I don't know if it's impossible, maybe because of the technology that we employ, but to charge people or businesses by weight. Because the tipping fees are going up because there's no discipline in a society, but we're all dragged in to this big bill. So if you're a diligent person, you do your civic duty, you're still dragged down with the tipping fees that all the rest of the people that really don't care. So I'd like to know if that is possible at all, to charge by weight. And was there any results for Parsippany's fair share housing number? Has that been finally determined? And one last question. How did the $3.7 million that we got stuck paying RD Developer for that buffer zone called open space, how did that affect our open space fund budget or our budget overall? I'd like to know the answer to that, because that's quite a bit of money.
30 seconds.
And if you could remember the questions I asked, I'd appreciate it. But really, we need somebody, we need like a diplomat from the mayor's office up there to go walking around and looking at this property every now and then, like an overseer or inspector general to show up every now and then. Because, like I said, there's not a community up there. It's supposed to be a community, but everybody's in their own bubble. So, you know, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Nick, when I received your email, as the other council members did, in regard to the garbage that was by a bar and their parking lot, I went there several days, and over a period of a few days, they did clean it up. So due to your diligence, it was cleaned up. So
That place is you got to keep your eye on it all the time. You need an eagle circle on over it.
Nick, I also checked into that. Unfortunately, there are other people that are not associated with the bar that are putting garbage on their property. So that's the problem.
And I know
'Cause
where some of it's coming from.
Right, but I've spoken to the owner there, and you know, the apartment complex. There's people driving in. You know, he has told me that there's been abandoned cars left in his lot. There's been, you know, major pieces of garbage that have just been thrown into his property that, you know, he has nothing to do with.
You tell him he could pay me minimum wage and I'll clean his parking lot once a week.
You know, it's
You know,
$15 an hour.
Can I just say also, we talked about this, I think, last year, and we were talking about taking some action on Beverwick, so maybe we could look into that again.
We can do that.
Yeah.
My name is Bob Venezia. I live at 102 Brooklawn Drive. And there were, I know it's early in the budget process, but there were a few things that I heard tonight that I feel are disturbing. And some of them are in the form of questions that I'd like you to answer, please. One is, how is it possible in the age of a 2% cap that we're negotiating 7% increases for policemen? I mean, who's negotiating for us? I mean, you know, it's a budget buster. Regarding open spaces, I would say it was only about 3 years ago that we had the prior administration ask to have an increased amount of the open space dedicated to maintaining parks, fields, things that were purchased with open space. Now we're increasing it again. I feel, you know, we're using this open space, more and more of it. I mean, now, I don't know if we can use the whole thing now for maintenance. Basically, what we're using it is as an end around to get around a 2% cap. We're using it for things that normally used to be done in the budget. Next thing, you know, there was the increase in the amount of ratables was $40 million. And that, that was a big deal. And said it might not happen again. Well, we got one project that we can't talk about that's worth $200 million, like 5 times that amount. So, and if that were taxed as a rateable, our ratables would go up 5 times what they're going up this year. And along those lines, where in the budget is this money from pilots? Where is it? Where is it showing up? Where is it going to? How does it reduce our taxes? Next thing, water and sewer adjustments. We heard that the amount of surplus that we should have in our current budget is it's recommended to be 10 to 15%. Well, we're running surpluses in our water and sewer of around 50%, and you're asking for more than that, 2% more each year. I mean, when you get down below the 10 to 15% surplus, then let's talk about the 2% then. I think I don't see the need for it. I mean, you're anticipating something that may not happen, and under the way it is today, we're in really good shape. And the last thing is the 0% tax increase that we had a couple of years ago. I would say this would be the last. We heard that it could take 4 years to recover from this. No, that's not acceptable. We've already, if we assess if this 4.72% increase goes through today or on this budget, that's recovering it in 1 year. I mean, if you had a 2% increase instead of the 0, if you had a 2 and a 2, that's 4%. We're doing 4.72 in 1 year. So I mean, after this year, I don't want to hear any more about how we need to recover from prior administration. You've done that. The budget is yours now. Thank you.
Bob, let me just say that we were just given the budget books tonight, so as far as the council, this was the first time that we've heard this presentation. We haven't had a chance to even look at anything yet. So, nothing's final. We've just shown this today.
I'm just planting a seed.
Through you, Council President, if I could just address a couple of those issues. First of all, Bob, with regard to the 2% cap, you're correct. When I talk about the police salaries and wages increase, their negotiated increase for cost of living in 2019 is 2%. But when you combine that with the step guide that's built into their contract, with longevity payments, with education payments, and all the other ancillary benefits that a police officer receives, that combined total equates to the 7% that I discussed in the presentation.
That was not all salaries. That was not all salaries.
It was salaries and wages. Yeah. Open space. There's no proposal by the administration to increase the amount that's collected for open space. It's a reallocation of what it can be used for, rather than purchase of acquiring open space for preservation. It would be used for park development and to support recreation in open space areas. With regard to the ratables, I can tell you that we will not regenerate $40 million in ratables in 20 or 21. That's a fact. This happened because of new development. It happened because our tax assessor was aggressive this year in going out and making sure that especially our commercial office buildings were assessed properly based on occupancy and other factors. With regard to Stanberry, there is no calculation for that in the 2019 budget. Likely there may not even be for 2020, although don't hold me to that, because quite frankly it's not been approved yet. So I can't plan on that until the council takes action and the developer starts their project, if that comes to pass. With regard to capital and utilities, with that I respectfully disagree with you. The bottom line is that, as I pointed out in the slide presentation, there was a time we were using nothing. Then there was a time we were using a little more than $500,000 to offset the current fund. we've now become reliant on sewer of taking $2.5 million from that in order to move it over. The better budgeting practice, as I said in the presentation, is to use the capital fund to pay cash for infrastructure projects on an aging sewer and water system in the township. That's what we should be doing, rather than incurring additional debt and having to pay interest on that debt. So that's the spending plan that I would like to see, considered and put together here in Parsippany. And with regard to the 0%, you brought it up. I didn't. There is a compounding factor to that. Yes, we have the cap capacity to present the proposal that we did tonight to the mayor and to the council, but at the same time, there's a compounding factor. Because if there were 7% raises and 3.5% raises and 2% raises in that 2017 budget, that all compounds when you deliver a zero tax increase. So we have to look forward. We can't look back. I think that this budget is a responsible spending plan for the township to put ourselves one step further onto a path for fiscal health. Thank you, Councilman.
Keith, Mr. Venezia said, did I misunderstand the slide about the health of our budget surplus for the sewer? Because I read that as we are half of where we should be.
We were half of what we were.
Where should we
were
within
in 2012? We had a $15 million surplus.
Right.
We now have a $7.6 or $7.8 million surplus.
But the recommendation.
But we're also taking. Keep in mind, we're taking 2.25 and applying that to offset based on the presentation that was made this evening.
But that 10 to 15% recommendation based on the town's budget, we're below the recommended.
That's on the current fund.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with the utilities. Put the utilities aside. But we're using utility surplus to offset the tax increase because our current fund surplus is not in the best fiscal health based on industry standards.
And that sewer surplus is below the 10% recommended.
Correct.
Not healthy.
Correct.
Thank you.
I didn't do the calculations on the percentage in the utilities, but we can do that and get that to you.
And so then what you're saying is we really should be using those reserves to pay for the sewer utility,
Correct.
any work that needs to be done there. Instead, we're borrowing, which is compounding.
If we didn't have to
Guys,
transfer this,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to ask the council members when they speak to speak into the mics, only because they're having difficulty
if
hearing
we
you in the
didn't
back.
have to transfer these balances from the sewer and water utility over to offset the current fund, we would be in a better position to pay for some of these very expensive infrastructure improvements that need to be made in the township. Water lines, sewer lines, water towers, pump stations. We'd essentially be able to pay for a portion of that in cash without taking on additional debt service and having to pay the interest over the life of the bond.
Yeah, that was my point, that we're really compounding it by going out and paying the debt service. as
That's
well,
correct.
Accumulating.
So McCarthy, I just need you to speak up
Thank
when
you,
you
Council
speak into the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Andy Chaffo. I live at 5 Glenbrook Drive. I'm a school board member, and full disclosure, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Education this evening. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a resident of the town. Being a board member since 2005, I do understand your pain about balancing the needs of the community with these are the taxpayers. And I am not against growth. However, I do want to talk about the pilot program, or the payment in lieu of taxes, which for any body that generates revenue to fund whatever it does, like a municipal government or a school board, should be very cautious. Just the name alone should really make you think about a development, especially one that has a residential component where people will be using services such as public safety, water, sewer, education. In my opinion, any development that has a residential component that is under the scheme of the pilot is a bad deal for the municipality. Full stop. And I'll just highlight an example. I'm not a mathematician, so I'm going to use simple numbers. If these developments generate school-age children who come to school in Parsippany, and they are...
Hold on a minute. I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah.
We were going to reserve comments in reference to the pilot and that development for when we get to that in the meeting.
I'm happy to come back.
All right. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. I could do my whole introduction again, too. Which is
No,
great.
you just picked up an extra minute.
Lou Valori, 36 Gathering Hill Court. How's everybody doing tonight? Hopefully okay. It's not a tough question. In regards to the, I guess the fee that's going to be charged for the school district, was it $75,000, $72,000 for the garbage pickup?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, in the near future, if the schools have any events for the town that's going to be utilized by the town on school property, are they going to be charging the town for using their fields for the fireworks or any types of events? Because the reason I'm asking this is that, is a fee really necessary if there's going to be other events going to be used at the school through the town, through the fireworks or any other events that go on the school property? So is it like, are we kind of voiding each other out? Is that charge really worth it while there's other events I'm sure the town's going to be using in the near future? Being a councilman in the past and a former board member, I just think that we're supposed to be working with each other with a shared service, and you know, you're almost going tit for tat in regards to, you're charging them for garbage, and I'm sure if they want, if you're using their field for fireworks, they could charge you a whole slew of money, or what other events. So I think you guys should really sit down and try to work that out for the taxpayers. That's all. Thank
Mr.
you.
Valori, if I can just ask you to sign in.
Yes, sorry about that.
I agree with Lou Valori. I was going to wait till a budget session to bring this up, but maybe we should do an analysis to see the net cost of services we provide to the school board and the net cost of services they provide to the township, and see if there's some kind of a balance. Because Lou's got a good point. I was going to bring it up during the budget. If we start charging them for things that we're doing for them now, they're going to start charging us. And where does that end? And we're affecting the same taxpayers either way. So if our services to them and their services to us come close to balancing, then I don't see any reason to change it.
Through you, Council President, I've started to ask the department heads to do exactly that and to quantify what services their particular departments provide to the Board of Education. We have a tremendous partnership, from my perspective, with the Board of Education. I have a direct line in communication with Dr. Sargent. I know Andy Miller, our Chief of Police, can say the same. They've sat down and negotiated resources for both school resource officers, also for special Class 3 police officers. There's a cost-sharing effort that goes along with that. Parks and Forestry is out there working with the school district. We provide the Border Collie for geese services at the Board of Education. Greg Schneider has reported to me that we partner with them on snow removal and salt distribution and all of those things. So we're in the process of conducting that analysis. The one thing I will say is that the recommendation to pass along the disposal costs of solid waste to the Board of Education came out of notes that I reviewed from last year's budget discussions. So that's where that recommendation came. I spoke to the mayor about it. I know there were council members sitting on the dais this evening last year who were in favor of passing along those costs, but I certainly think it's worth a discussion during this year's budget process. Thank you.
Nancy Chaffo, 5 Glenbrook Drive. One of the suggestions I would make is that, being we're all sitting here, is that you have some printed copies of the budget proposal, so while we're sitting here, we can also review it at our desk, at our tables, and look and see what notes we want to make on them. We've been paying for the school's garbage for over 15 years, so my township taxes includes that pickup. Now you want me to continue to pay in the township amount and cut into the school's budget of 2%, while you raise our taxes another 4.2%. You're telling me it's the same thing because I'm still paying the taxes, but however, I don't know how many people realize this, but my school's taxes are collected by the township that go to the state. I don't get all of my taxes back from the state. So when I pay for garbage pickup from our town, directly, I'm paying the taxes and you're taking up the garbage. The school budget would have to increase a lot more just to make up the money we have to pay for the garbage pickup. You're taking the money right from a classroom. And then you're adding the burden of more children to the district, which children are never supposed to be a burden, but when you have contractors developing all this developments and not contributing to the town, it is a burden. Also, have you ever thought about cutting the spending in our town instead of increasing our taxes? We keep getting these tax increases, and I don't see any cutting in the spending at all. You've increased our payroll by hiring more employees. You know, Maybe we have to work a little bit longer hours like everyone else and work from home a little bit, but we need to cut the spending in this town, and starting with the employees, which contributes a lot to most of the budget. When you have small local town hall meetings at the schools, like the master plan meeting at the Parr Hills, did you pay the Board of Education for the use of space? I would like to know if you paid the Board of Education for the use of space there, because when people come to meetings like that, they use our garbage cans, and they throw out garbage. And now we'll be charged to pick up your garbage when you have meetings at our schools. So I would like to know if those meetings are a part of this new budget also. The ones that you have at the schools, if they're going to be part of this budget, I'd like to know that so we could offset the garbage amount that we will charge back to you to pay for it. Thank you.
We will
Ms.
charge
Chappell?
to you. Are you representing the Board of Education? I'm sorry, you said we will charge to you?
Well, you're charging us $70,000+.
So you're here representing the Board of Education?
No, I'm here representing my tax dollars.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Council President, if I could just make a clarifying statement on that. Ms. Chaffo, it's lost on me, your reference, and I actually was presented by an employee here looking for some clarification on something that was posted on social media that alluded to the same. The tax dollars that are collected here by the township on behalf of the Board of Education, by the way, by our employees, and then we in turn cut a check to the Board of Education, never go to the state of New Jersey. And I've heard you now mention it twice in a public hearing, and I know you posted it on social media too. Whether you're talking about income tax revenue that you pay through your income tax to the state that you don't get back, that I can't speak to. But I can speak to the fact that we cut a check after we collect those tax dollars on behalf of the Parsippany Troy Hills School District, and we cut that check directly to the Board of Education from the township's bank account. So the money going to the state, I'm not clear on. The other thing I want to say is that if we are looking to cut spending to the point where we would actually get down to the 2% cap, I can say to you with utter certainty that we would be talking about layoffs. And the mayor, when he asked me to work with our CFO, Ann Cucci, to prepare this year's spending plan, he was clear to me that he did not have any intentions this year of having to lay off any employees here at the township in any wholesale way. So that was a directive that was strongly taken into consideration. We could nickel and dime this budget. I'm sure, some people will, again, a spending plan like this is priorities. Everybody's going to have a different set of priorities. Everybody to my right is going to have a different set of priorities. They'll get to decide what they think should be cut, what they don't. That's what the statute allows for the council to do in this form of government. But at the end of the day, if you're looking to get to 2%, I can tell you that in my professional opinion, we will be talking about layoffs. Thank you, Council President.
My name is Stephen Roman, R-O-M-A-N, and I live at 4 Spencer Court in the Glacier Hill section of Parsippany. I have to ask that I cannot sign. I'm a disabled veteran. I can't write standing up. So I think...
It's not a problem, Mr. Roman.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about 3 issues. The first issue is an annoyance. I called City Hall 5 times last week and never got a live person. It went into the, if you know your extension, blah, 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 and that's fine. But every single time that I pushed for the operator, it went to the mayor's hotline, and that was another recording there. We have more people in town hall than we've ever had before. Maybe a live person might pick up the phone. That's a personal thing. Number 2, so happy to see over where I live major road projects, new curbing, new paving, makes the area look beautiful. The street I live on, over 40 years ago, we put sewers in. We had to pay for them. $10,000 was my fee. But we were assured that new curbing would be put in. Unfortunately, it was never done. And what curbing is there now is deteriorating to the point where it's unsafe. Maybe someone could come over and take a look at it. Again, a personal thing. Next, I want to address the mayor and Mr. Kosmark. Mr. Mayor, when you ran for office, you told us you were going to bring change to Parsippany. You were going to change it. You were going to make it better. 4.75% increase in taxes is far from better to me, okay? We have the town council, 2 Democratic members. You keep charging 4.75, and you really earn the Democratic label of a tax and spend mayor. I speak for myself now. Under President Obama, we got a 3.9% increase in Social Security in 9 years. You want to increase our taxes 4.75%. Where do you think senior citizens are going to get that money from? Unless you have a machine that prints it. I don't. So when you sit there smugly telling us how these are the best things for Parsippany, tell us what's best for the taxpayers of Parsippany. Don't tell us what you think is best. Tell people who can't afford it, the senior citizens in this town, those people who are on fixed incomes, those people who don't have the luxury of living in Upper Saddle River in a $5 million mansion. We live in our modest homes here in Parsippany. So when you come here and tell us about how you've worked so hard, oh no, Mr. Mayor is a good union man who's used to negotiating contracts. Put a double number in there, we want 8%, but we really want 4%. Let's get real. Get the axe out, start cutting, and make the town affordable. Not only are you saying the town is in bad shape now, but next year, oh, we got to raise the 10%. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't think that's the change that you ran on, was it?
Mr. Roman,
To price people out of town. Thank you.
Through you, Council President. Mr. Roman, I grew up in a modest Cape Cod house on Williams Drive in Woodland Park, New Jersey. My father was a sock salesman. My late mother was a secretary. I ran for office at 23 years old, and not one budget have I voted on in that town, prepared in Elmwood Park, or prepared here tonight in Parsippany, where I did not have the taxpayer of the town I was working for as the first priority. So you can come up to the microphone, respectfully, sir, and you can, it's my turn, with all due respect, and you can grandstand about tax increases and so on and so forth. But the financial picture that I inherited on October 1st was not created overnight. It did not start on January 1st of 2018. If you believe that these things happen year by year, sir, you're mistaken. This is a compounded situation that has occurred by utilizing funding from utilities to offset tax increases. If we do not reverse that course, which started way back when, we will not have the funding to offset the budget in 4 or 5 years. That, sir, is a fact. That practice was not started by this administration. It didn't start when the man to my left got here on January 1st of last year. It didn't start when I arrived here on October 1st of last year. It started many moons ago. And I'm telling you, with all due respect, for the health and welfare of Parsippany Troy Hills, New Jersey, We need to reverse those budgeting practices in order to put the current fund, which operates every department except 3, into better fiscal health. So while I appreciate your comments about cutting the budget, I can tell you that when we first started this process, it was a 10% increase. And for those employees who it's been inferred need to work here late, my staff was here till 3 o'clock in the morning last week in preparation of this budget. If you ever see Ann Gainey in the hallway, you should thank her. Not an ounce of overtime, not an ounce of comp time given to her. Ann Cucci's here every weekend mulling over this budget to make the absolute best budget that we could have presented tonight. So I appreciate your suggestion of cutting. I can tell you we have. That slide, which by the way, Ms. Chaffo, this presentation will be online tomorrow morning, but I didn't think it was fair to show it to the public before I showed it to the council. But I will tell you right now, sir, it's all with good intentions to sit here and say you can cut, but those mandatory costs, which is north of 80% of this budget, they can't be cut. I can't tell the state that I'm not paying the pension bill. I can't tell the United States government that I'm not paying the Social Security bill. I can't tell the police officers and the blue-collar workers who I have binding contracts with that I'm not paying what was promised. So 16% of the increases are discretionary. We could take money from the white-collar employees and not give them their 2%, the same employee who stayed here till 3 o'clock in the morning. We can make the decision not to do a TNR program, not to give the daycare center $10,400. We can make those decisions, and we will, and the council will. That's why we have budget hearings. That's why they'll prepare their budget for introduction, hopefully in March. And you'll have another opportunity to come before us. But, sir, with all due respect, never believe that I came to this job not thinking about the taxpayers that hired me, first and foremost in my mind.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Tim Berrios, 24 Farmstead Drive. I am a Parsippany Troy Hills Board of Education member, and I stand in front of you as the liaison to the town council meetings. And I just wanted to come up here and just make sure I set the record straight on a couple of items that came up just recently. First of all, is an invite to everyone that we are in the beginning processes of our budget process. That is all held publicly, and everyone is invited to attend these public sessions, which starts probably the next month and will end sometime in April. I just wanted to also state that as also a member of the Finance Committee, having sat through a few of these budgeting processes and having spent some time in the wee hours of the morning, I can absolutely stand in front of you and the public and let you know that not every dollar of your taxes to the Board of Education goes to the Board of Education. There is no misunderstanding, there is no gray area. If I remember correctly, according to our business administrator, it probably is in the area of 55 to 65% on the dollar. Now that I will definitely clarify officially from the next time I'm here. But please misunderstand that not every dollar that leaves Parsippany, I don't care how it gets transferred, whether it's a check, an EFT, or it's hand delivered, it does not get back into the school systems. So we do not put that money back in the school systems because we can't. We are living also under a 2% cap, just like everybody else is. So we are negotiating within very strict parameters with our own statutory costs. Just wanted to make sure I passed that along. Thank you.
Mr. Berrios, if I can ask you to please sign in.
I did.
Oh, you did? Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, see no one else come forward, entertain a motion to close the public?
Motion.
Nope.
No, I think we have somebody, Council President.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, my name is Srini. Good evening, sir. My name is Srini Ida. and,
Sir, could you just speak
Could you
into the
speak into the
microphone?
mic?
My name is Srini Ida. I live in Lake Hiawatha, and I've been here like last 12 years.
Sir, I need you. I'm sorry. I apologize. I need you to speak up.
People in the back can't hear you.
Yeah. Today I'm representing through Seva International non-profit organization, and the reason I'm here is to put a question. This year we want to do some volunteer work for Parsippany Town for part of the Earth Day to involve some. We already have a program running, so there are like 40-50 kids, like the high school kids. They're all part of the volunteer group, and I want to put the kids for a program to clean up our streets, and we're already doing some work in this year. We did the work for Route 46, like the Adopt Highway program. We've been cleaning last year and before last year, and I want to expand that program and adopt the Clean Up Street program and introduce for this Earth Day. So the question is there something I need to take permission here for that activity?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your generous offer.
We put you in touch with Mr. Homyak over there. I'm sure he's got some areas.
But I would like to direct you to our public information officer. Please give him your phone number, and we'd like to reach out to you and talk. Okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, if I can ask you to please sign in.
He did.
Oh, he did? Okay, sorry. I'm sorry tonight. There's a lot of people, so please forgive me, guys, if I ask, and you guys have already done it. Forgive me in advance.
Okay, so no one else come forward. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Okay, Mr. DePiero?
Ordinance 2019:02. Bond ordinance providing for various road and sidewalk improvements in and by the township of Parsippany Troy Hills in the county of Morris, New Jersey, appropriating $3,570,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,391,500 bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof. Be it resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading at a meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills held on February 19, 2019, and that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on March 19th, 2019
19.
at 7 p.m. prevailing time, or as soon thereafter as the matter may be reached at the municipal building in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance, with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes. And going with the next couple ordinances, there's a typo. March 19 is supposed to say 2019, not 2018.
Ordinance 2019:03, bond ordinance providing for the primary scum pump rehabilitation at the sewer utility in and by the township of Parsippany Troy Hills in the county of Morris, New Jersey, appropriating $300,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $300,000 in bonds or notes of the township to finance the cost thereof. Be it resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on the first reading at a meeting of the Town Council at the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills held on February 19th, 2019, and that said ordinance be further considered for a second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on March 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m. prevailing time, or as soon thereafter as the matter may be reached at the municipal building and in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given the opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ms. Peterson?
Ordinance 2019-04, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, Morris County, New Jersey, creating new Chapter 125 of the Code of Parsippany Troy Hills to establish a permanent requirement to operate a crane in the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills. Be it resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on first reading at a meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills held on February 19th, 2019, and that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on March 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m., prevailing time or as soon thereafter as the matter may be reached, at the municipal building in said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ms. Grignani?
Council President, if I may, before I read this ordinance, I was informed that there were inquiries to our township from Parsippany residents working as federal employees during the budget impasse. They were concerned about interest charged on property taxes being paid late. The resolution I asked Mr. Lott to prepare is a result of a bill passed waiving delinquent property taxes. It is effective immediately and is retroactive to December 2000.
We're on page 4, 2019:05.
I
You're referring
apologize.
to a future.
I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. Ordinance 2019:05, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, Morris County, New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 346, Snow and Ice Removal, of the Code of Parsippany Troy Hills to impose a fine for violators. It is resolved that the above ordinance be introduced, read by title, and passed on the first reading at the meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills held on February 19th, 2019, and that said ordinance be further considered for second reading and final passage at a meeting to be held on March 19th, 2019 at 7 p.m. prevailing time or as soon thereafter as the meeting may be reached at the municipal building in the said township, at which time all persons interested shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning said ordinance. Be it further resolved that the clerk be authorized and directed to advertise said ordinance with the notice of introduction thereof being published in the official newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
DePiero?
Ordinance 2019:01. This is ordinance for second reading. Ordinance of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills in the County of Morris, authorizing the execution of a financial agreement with the district at 1515 Urban Renewal LLC and granting a tax exemption with respect to that certain property identified as Block 200, Lot 1.2. Notice for the ordinance above was published in the Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, on February 11, 2019. This ordinance was introduced at the February 5th, 2019 agenda meeting. Motion to accept that ordinance 2019:01 be heard in its second and final reading by title only.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Council President,
Okay,
before
before
you
we-
open the
Go
hearing
ahead.
to the public, I have some comments that I've been asked to relay to the public with regard to the Stanberry Development LLC located at 1515 Route 10. There have been a number of correspondences that have been circulated here in the Parsippany community over the last number of days, and also posts on social media, many of which have been brought to either elected officials in the community or to my office for inquiry and clarification. First, I want to begin by saying that the Stanberry file, which was left to me by my predecessor, dates back to 2015. There is correspondence going back to that site on Route 10, which was earmarked later by the Planning Board as an area in need of redevelopment, and discussion of the pilot program dating back to April 3rd of 2015, with subsequent correspondence right up until today. There have been insinuations within the community that this is a tremendous tax burden on the citizens of Parsippany. While I'm not here to set policy, that is the job of those that you elected, I am here to provide facts. And pilots can be very controversial. There obviously needs to be sensitivity to the fact that the way the state of New Jersey structures pilot programs, the lion's share of the tax revenue that's generated through a pilot is sent to the municipality rather than the school district. But I do want to stress that if the current office building became occupied by today's standards, over the next 30 years, that office complex would generate for Parsippany and the county and the Board of Education approximately $7 million in tax revenue. Under the pilot, $61 million over the next 30 years will be generated for the municipality with a portion to the county. Granted, the school board does not reap the benefit in any pilot program, but the administration has made a conscious decision that should this ordinance be adopted tonight, and should the Stanberry project proceed, that the administration will sit down with the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools.
With the support of the council.
With the support of the council. Thank you, Councilman. That's why I have the veteran to my right. With the support of the council, to structure a program where on a per student basis, children who live in the Stanberry community and attend the public schools here in Parsippany, that the Board of Education will be compensated on a per pupil student payment plan. This is being done in neighboring Denville. There is also a model for this in Woodbridge Township in Middlesex County. So the accusation or the insinuation that this is a tremendous tax burden is somewhat unfounded. There's also been information dispensed to the community that this will have a tremendous cost on services. In fact, through the negotiation with the developer will waive reimbursement from the Kelly Act, which is also known as the Municipal Services Act. This is where the municipality is responsible for reimbursing a condominium development for the cost of snow removal, street lighting, and trash and recycling collection. By way of example, the Mountain Club complex here in Parsippany with 702 units receives an approximate annual reimbursement of well over $100,000. Hunting Ridge, which has 208 units, receives nearly $30,000 in reimbursements, and that's on a year-by-year basis. With regard to additional traffic on Route 10, anyone who has looked over the Stanberry plan will see that the developer has agreed to do off-site road improvements to reduce the traffic coming from any development at that location off of Route 10 and directly on to Dryden Way. Keep in mind, this is also why the developer has approached the Morris County Improvement Authority for the RAB for funding for those off-site public, I stress public, road improvements.
Mr. Casmore, I don't want to interrupt you, but also those road improvements not only would take traffic off of Route 10.
Correct.
Would also take traffic off of Route 202. Where
That is
people would
correct.
have to come on to 202 to turn around.
There you go. That's phase one. And that, by the way, that it has been negotiated into phase one of the project rather than the latter part, thanks to the more recent negotiations. With regard to the amount of units, it currently stands at 441 units. We were notified as a township on January 28th, 2019, by way of a letter written from the law firm of Day Pitney, who represents Stanberry, with a carbon copy to the special master appointed by the Superior Court here in Morris County, that they were moving to become an intervening party on our affordable housing litigation. They subsequently met with the administration and presented plans for over 800 units with no road improvements, no waivering of the Kelly Act, larger apartments, and quite frankly, no retail space at that location.
Also, can you state how many more school children? I know we were shown something, I believe it's 25 school children with the current project. It's well over, it's close to about 150 was the projection.
Correct.
If it was the 800 apartments.
I don't have those numbers at my fingertips.
I know we were showing
I
something.
think it was actually 32 on the original plan and north of 100 with the 800 units. There is a real concern amongst the administration, and I think the council shares this, I don't want to speak for them, that if this ordinance does not pass tonight, that the representatives from Stanberry and their attorney from Day Pitney will formally file litigation in Superior Court. Unfortunately, and this is not just in Parsippany, this is every municipality in the state of New Jersey, is subject to a builder's remedy lawsuit. Now let me explain this to the public here in Parsippany. The courts do not care about additional school children, about additional traffic, about lack of sewer, about lack of water. All they care about is having to meet the affordable housing mandate on a suitable piece of property. I am not a judge, I am not an attorney, but I have personally experienced in the community I represent a judge rule that an apartment complex that had no business being built in the place that it was be mandated to be built in order to meet the affordable housing obligation of my community. I believe that based on Stanberry's efforts to build here in Parsippany, dating back to early 2015, that any judge that this goes before will approve those 800 units as the alternate to what's being presented before the council tonight. I have spoken extensively with the township attorney. I have spoken extensively with Ms. London, who represents us on our affordable housing obligation lawsuit. And I can tell you without question that if this is not approved, you will see 800 units built on Route 10 at 1515. The other factor that I think needs to be taken into serious consideration is that we have had a visit from another developer within, Council President, about a quarter of a mile of this site, who intends to come either for rezoning or to the Board of Adjustment for a variance to build 300 units with no retail and no road improvements just down the road. So at the end of the day, the mayor used a more descriptive adjective of what this is. But this is the best of a bad situation when it comes to the pilot program. I've sat in many meetings with council members and with the mayor who have said forcefully and directly to developers that they will not consider a pilot program for a residential proposal prospectively. I know that's been asked about within the community as well.
Can you just say that one more time? And let me just phrase the question. Will this set a precedent for future developers?
I'm not the attorney at this day,
No.
so I'll defer to Mr. Locke.
No, it will not.
I would agree with the mayor. It sets no precedent.
That is all I have on this topic, Council President.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. DePiero.
Motion to open the public hearing for ordinance 2019:01.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Okay, so the floor is open to speak on the Stanberry ordinance only. Thank you.
Mary Przicki, 273 Marcella Road. You talk about a precedent. I've sat there and heard about R&D when they wanted to put 666 units if we didn't do it their way. And now we are hearing from Stanberry, who was saying, oh, don't do it my way, it's 888. I'm just as sick and tired of coming to council meetings and planning board meetings where the developer gets the upper hand. And if you're telling me this isn't going to set a precedent, the precedent was already set by Waterview. And now it's going to be set by Stanberry, and you know darn well what the people who have land on Littleton Road by Route 10 think that they're in an area in need of a redevelopment too. And they are planners, and they will hold us like this, and we will not get what's best for this town.
I think, Mary, what they were referring to as precedent was the pilot.
Correct.
That if there was...
But what I'm telling you...
Mary, I need you to, into the mic.
What I'm telling you is, though, every developer comes with an angle, and this is theirs,
believe
and
me.
this angle will be the next developer who comes, who wants to
I
build.
totally agree.
We all
I totally
know.
agree with you. This is on the courts. This
Yes.
is not us. None of us want this at all. It's the courts basically
Yeah, and
ramming
that-
it down
and-
our throats.
And that's what, I mean, that's why you get so frustrated as a citizen, and you come up here every day hoping for the best for your town, and it doesn't happen because the developers overrule, and that's greed.
Mrs. Przicki, let me tell you that the council president could not be more correct. The reason we are here today and every other municipality in New Jersey is in the same predicament is because the legislature has failed us, and they have kicked this issue into the judicial system, and it doesn't matter what governor it was, doesn't matter which party he or she was from, they kicked the can down the road, it entered into the courts, and the courts do not take into account the items that I listed earlier. The schools, the traffic, the services, the utilities, they don't take it into account.
I understand all of that, but I guarantee you that when GlaxoSmithKline comes up, and when the other, Matt Calley comes up, they will come up with the same storyline. And yes, the legislature in Trenton, when you look at who controls it, you better think about how you vote.
Nicholas Homiak again, Lake Hiawatha. If the criteria is affordable housing, what is the lure of the retail? And if the retail doesn't play out, then how does that affect? Is there any loopholes in this somewhere down the line where they won't even have to be obligated to their pilot because their development somehow overall failed? When you say it's an alternative of 800 units or 441 units, without knowing what our affordable housing obligation is, or if we can hold our ground and not be forced, if that site can hold 800 units, and then we can get somehow more than the 20% or a maximum number from any developer to meet our obligation strategically at one site we should not fall for this retail, and they're improving the road, but the people that are living there are going to still be on the road. So all they're doing is accommodating their development site. I don't see it as an improvement. I just see it as, I don't know, like if they have all this money to do all this work, but they don't want to pay taxes like a regular entity would, it just seems fishy. But once again, without knowing the numbers, and I don't see anything wrong with, if it has to be 800 units, then let it be 800 units. And up the percentage of the affordable housing. So, you know, it's the system is taking us all down. Nobody wants to do anything for everybody. Everybody wants to make a buck. It's ridiculous. And if I may say something to these people that think that senior citizens are going to be forced out by this or any other project, you can make up to $86,000 a year and put in for a tax freeze if you're 65 or over. So all these belly acres up here, about $5 a month, their taxes going up or something, you put in for a tax freeze.
That's right.
And we should say that to these people that come up here, like the grandstander over here. You go down, fill out your PR2 form,
All right, wait,
and you
Nick.
get your tax
Nick,
freeze.
We're not.
All right,
that's-
I'm sorry.
That's off.
I apologize. All right.
Mr. Locke, can you address the you know, he's stating to go for more than 20%. Is that even possible?
Right, well, the project is proposed to be a mixed-use project. It has a 15% set aside because that was what was originally part of the negotiations with the township. If there's any change in the composition of the project, that's going to require approval by council. So they're legally obligated under the redeveloper agreement and under the pilot to build
But
a
if
mixed-use
it
project.
were to go to the 800 apartments,
It would not.
it wouldn't. It
It
can't
would
go
not.
higher than 20%. Right?
Yeah, under the current methodology, a 20% set aside is required for both rental and for ownership units, correct.
And to address your other issue, Mr. Homiak, I've spoken to many residents that are going to be the closest to this development, and you say how if they live there, they're going to go there. But with the road improvements, at least it's the lesser of two evils because it keeps traffic off of Route 202. People that live in that general area, those 3 or 4 developments over there, everyone that I've spoken to is saying, hey, if we're going to get stuck with something, take the deal that keeps the traffic off of 202.
If the traffic off for how long?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you. You know, like I said, it's the lesser of the two evils, basically. You know.
Okay, Council President, we can't have it back and
Right,
forth.
everything.
I apologize.
I answered the question. We got to get the next
Yeah,
question.
because only people can't hear you in the back, Nick, when you're talking from there.
Bob Venezia, 102 Brooklawn Drive. As I've found out in the past few months, the terms and conditions contained in any pilot are tilted heavily in the favor of the developer. That's certainly true of the Stanbury pilot that you're going to vote on tonight. In order to maximize profits and reduce risk for Stanbury, I believe that Parsippany is being asked to forego tax revenue that is far and above what the developer is entitled to, and to assume several risks that the developer is unwilling to share. The clearest example is the overly generous tax abatement that the pilot provides. A fair pilot would compensate Stanbury for lost income due to reduced rents associated with the 34 affordable housing units. This amount can be calculated fairly accurately and totals about $750,000 a year. In contrast, the pilot provides Stanbury with an annual tax abatement of about $2 million, a clear case of Parsippany paying too much money. The next monetary windfall contained in the pilot that benefits the developer at Parsippany's expense involves contributions to the Housing Trust Fund. Stanbury is obligated to provide 68 affordable housing units. 34 are being built at the site, and Stanbury is compensating Parsippany for the remaining 34 affordable units by making a payment into the Housing Trust Fund. The value to Stanbury of being able to collect the full market rate rents on these 34 units over the next 30 years is about $375,000 per unit in present day dollars. Under the terms of the pilot, Stanbury is making a housing trust fund payment of only $75,000 per unit to Parsippany. Big difference. They're making $375, we're getting $75. Bad deal. There's another hidden perk in the pilot that's going to reap huge dividends for the developer. The district at 1515 and other similar projects will eventually force the Board of Education to expand the infrastructure of our schools. 12 years ago, expansion cost $47 million. We had a bond issue. The next expansion is probably going to be in the range of $90 million. Yet, any development that is governed by a pilot will not pay a penny of the cost for school bonding or any other bonding in the township that the township may issue. Oh, and that's over the next 30 years. Finally, there's another section of the agreement where the township is being taken advantage of. Under the existing terms of the pilot, if the entire 1515 complex were sold to another entity, such as a real estate investment trust, a REIT, the tax benefits in the pilot will transfer to the new owner. Why should anonymous shareholders in a REIT who have no connection to the project whatsoever profit from the tax benefits in the pilot, while Parsippany gained nothing at all? At a previous meeting, Councilman DiPierre tried to eliminate the transfer of pilot benefits to third parties, but was only partially successful. On the risk side of the equation, we come back to the number of students that the district of 1515 is projected to send to our schools. Stanbury insists that their estimate of 20 to 25 is accurate. However, under no circumstances will they agree to any conditions in the pilot that would make them share in the educational costs for students exceeding their maximum estimate. The vote on tonight's ordinance will not be an easy one. The project itself is first class, the developer is highly respected, and the affordable housing units are important to the township. It is also true that if the pilot is defeated, we have no idea what's going to take its place, and most likely there will be litigation. Even so, you cannot vote for this pilot as it is currently written. As I outlined earlier, it contains too many clauses that are unfavorable to the township, as well as too much risk. Despite empty assurances to the contrary, you cannot take the risk that this money-losing pilot could become the benchmark for similar projects in the pipeline. Respectfully, I ask that you do not vote in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll try again.
Don't worry.
My name is Pat Venezia. I live at 102 Brooklawn Drive. First, I want to thank Councilwoman McCarthy for voting no on the first reading of the ordinance regarding the pilot for the district of 1515. Unfortunately, though, the measure passed 4-1. Stanbury, the developer, is insisting on a substantial minimum return on the project. And we learned tonight that they're threatening us with the builder's remedy if we don't go along. They want Parsippany taxpayers not only to subsidize them with this pilot, but to assume the risk if their estimate of only 25 new students from the development is inaccurate. I agree with Councilwoman Peterson who last year said that Parsippany needs to develop best practices for such developments in the future. There are more development proposals in the pipeline, as you all know, to convert other empty office buildings and other buildings to apartments, and Parsippany needs to be better prepared than we are right now for them. However, even with excellent best practices defined and followed, I think that Parsippany will have trouble negotiating a fair deal with developers in the future because of the precedent you will be setting if you approve this pilot tonight. Subsequent developers will want the same deal, so any negotiation with them will be more difficult. They will argue that we aren't negotiating fairly if we don't give them similar pilot concessions. So, not only will we continue to be under the threat of the builder's remedy, but the builders will have this generous pilot agreement on their side. Councilman DiPiero, I understand, as quoted in Focus, that you said, quote, "This pilot will not set a precedent for any other application for any other developer. We can successfully defend against that," end quote. I don't understand how, but I sincerely hope you're right. If this ordinance passes, I will hold you to that promise. I understand that this is a difficult decision, given our affordable housing situation and the possibility of litigation. However, I think the cost of this pilot, both today from Stanbury and tomorrow from other developers, is so great that it's worth the risk. Therefore, I ask you to vote no on this pilot ordinance. Thank you.
Hi, Isabella Alfano, 8 New England Drive. I think that there's parts of this program that I think are very successful. I think a pilot is not the best way to go. A lot of it will be burdening the taxpayer. I think a part of it that concerns me is that a few years ago we said we wanted to do a study on the Board of Education and how many children are in our area, because we were trying to figure out resolutions on stacking. You remember, right, Mike? And they said, well, we're not going to go to each house and ask how many children are here, how many children are there. But now you're saying in 440 units, we're going to be able to quantify how many children are going to be there and kind of project how much students are going to be there. I don't think that's a realistic answer. Out of the 440 units, how many of them are 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom? We have not had any granularized information on that. There's direct impact as far as services. And the schools is a big deal. I don't know if even the traffic study had the ability to kind of look at what's going to happen. I mean, it's wonderful that you're saying that you guys proactively looked at a situation and there's going to be some road clearing. But I think there's a lot of things that aren't being really looked at. And I don't think you're really looking into the fact how it's going to impact not only our fire services, our emergency services, our police services. I think, like most people in Parsippany, we are being overburdened as far as overbuilding. And there's a lot of things that we really have to look at. My children go to one school and there's 26 children in her class. Please do not tell me that you guys know how many people are living in what places, because you're not doing it. And you cannot tell me that these additional people with families are going to come in here and it's not going to impact our schools. It just doesn't make sense.
Ms. Alfano, just through you, Council President, my apologies. Just to clarify your comments, there is a Rutgers criteria that has been developed on a region-by-region basis that our planners use to generate the projection of school children based on housing units. How many bedrooms they have, the
So how many
density.
bedrooms are the 440 units?
Hear
gonna have
me
each?
out. So
No, because I've read almost everything, and there's not really a clearly defined. So if there is information on it, I just would like
I
to
don't
hear
have
it.
that at my fingertips, but I can get that. For you.
Okay,
But
because
let me-
I
but let
think
me-
if you have a 3-bedroom unit, you can kind of then estimate.
It's a target to generate school
Hold on,
children.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other questions before he's going to answer?
Oh, no, I think he,
Okay.
yeah.
So I think he doesn't want us to get to a back and forth. But I think so just so you know, the council did request about a month and a half ago for our financial advisor to do a projection, and this is what the council president referred to earlier, which I now have a copy of in front of me. The projected amount of school children for the 441, which is what's being considered by the council tonight, is 43. The alternative, which would be conventionally taxed, yes, but the alternative of the 800 units, the projection that our professional put together is 118. So if we were to have the 441 approved tonight, the cost based on per pupil for that 43 students would be $475,365. If we went through the alternate plan and they were approved for the 800 units, it would be nearly $1.3 million. So obviously the amount of school children that would be generated would be less based on the current proposal that's before the council tonight versus the alternative of the 800 units, which again, in my humble opinion, and I think our legal team would agree, they would have a very good shot of the courts approving those 800 units as the alternative.
I don't have the exact numbers here, but for the 441 units, some of those will be studio apartments. Some of those will be one-bedroom.
I know, everybody
apartments.
keeps saying some, that, we don't have.
I can get you the exact numbers.
No,
here's-
but we've been
the
having this
bottom line-
conversation for quite some time, and that's just the thing, there's a lot of ambiguity. And I don't understand why, even in my district, even in my personal school systems, you can't explain one teacher and 26 student ratio and think that's normal. It isn't. It isn't in Parsippany.
Mrs. Alfano, as in reference to, I totally agree with you when you said it's going to be a burden on our emergency services, our fire, this and that. Totally
And
agree
then
with
your
you.
proposed budget said
Hold-
you're thinking
hold
about
on.
doing a third-party system
Hold
where
on.
you're going to share
The
our
quest-
medical services.
The
and
problem,
police services.
I totally, and I'm sure we totally agree with you. The problem is the courts, they don't care. They don't care if they say, hey, Parsippany, you're getting this, so you need to add 20 police officers. They don't care.
That's fine. If we're going to get it, we're going to get it. But don't give out tax incentives to people that can afford it. Don't pass that burden on to the taxpayer, because guess what? We're looking at our personal budgets and we're deciding what we're paying and what we're not going to pay. So yes, every time there's a tax increase, I have to decide, wow, does my son get piano lessons, or do I stop taking my daughter to jujitsu? I love the way you just say it. I know you have two salaries. You're here and then you're a mayor someplace else. Not everyone has that luxury. And you can poo-poo it and say, oh, it's just Legos. It isn't. It isn't. There's people behind your decisions, and it's very disrespectful. And from here on this end, it looks very arrogant.
That's always a tough act to follow. So I'll do my best to not be too boring. I am still Andy Chaffo, and I still live at 5 Glenbrook Drive in Fulton. I haven't changed my address in the half hour I've been sitting back there. Again, I just want to stress that I'm here speaking on myself, but I will make mention of some things on the Parsippany Board of Education that I believe the pilot program does impact. I'm not a mathematician, so bear with me. I know there is a Rutgers study, and we do use that when we look at development, so we're well aware of that. And whether that number is 40 or 50, I think is academic. But just as an example, and it's actually great to hear, Mr. Mayor, that the municipality may be sharing in some of that tax revenue. As you may know, the budget setting for a school district is the purview of the Board of Education, not the district administration. And I also sit on the Finance Committee of the board. It's the first I'm hearing of it tonight. So it's actually refreshing. I've not heard this comment before.
I discussed it with the Board of Education very early last year, just between the Board of Education president and the superintendent of schools, that was something that I walked into the office wanting to do because it just seemed the right thing to do and the fair thing to do. So,
Well, that's refreshing that that is on the table. It's the first that I'm hearing about it. But just as an example, if we use 50 students that could potentially reside at these over 400 residential units, and we, on average, and this is just an average, it's close, but it's not exact, for a general education student in Parsippany, estimated to cost $12,000 to educate a student in this town. 12,000 times 50 is about $600,000 per year in revenue that could be generated from a residential development that actually pays taxes that the Board of Education will not have. If, again, for example, these 50 students require the Board of Education to hire, for example, 5 teachers at a very low average salary and benefits of $50,000 a year, that's another $250,000 in expense that is now the burden of the Board of Education. So between the reduction in potential revenue and the additional expense, it's about $850,000 per year that the board will need to make up in some way. We can't rely on the town for the garbage pickup, so maybe that $75,000 we'll have to, really figure out where we get that. We will, I'm sure, as a board, consider hiring a demographer and look at redistricting. Because I think one of the things maybe the people in the audience don't understand is just because a residential development has a number of students, it doesn't mean those students are going to the closest school. So a redistricting not only impacts the area where this development is, potentially impacts every district in this town, because we will need to now look at where we're sending students. So could impact 50 people, could impact 5,000 people. We don't yet know. We'll have to do that study. The business administrator in his budget pointed out the necessity to give an increase to non-bargain unit employees. And I make no judgment on whether that is the correct thing to do. But what struck me in that presentation was that he didn't want to have 2 classes of employees. However, as this council considers residential developments under pilots, you're creating 2 classes of residents in this town: those who pay taxes and those who do not pay taxes. And the burden of the tax collection that funds the school district and the municipality falls on those who pay taxes. So, what I would ask you to think about that as we continue to add residential units that are non-tax-paying units. Are we going to consider that the rest of the township makes up for that difference? I don't think that's a good deal for those folks. Just a couple of last points.
1 minute, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you very much. Again, the business administrator correctly pointed out that about 67% of the tax bill goes to fund education. And he also correctly pointed out that the town collects on behalf of the Board of Education that money and provides that to the school district. What he didn't mention was the vast majority of that money does not stay in Parsippany. The state returns a percentage of that, and it's a very small percentage, with an eyedropper. And the rest of that goes to fund the State Department of Education, State Board of Education, and other municipalities outside of Parsippany. So that money does not stay in town. Over the years, the Board of Ed and the municipal government has had a good working relationship, and I don't want to see that end. Certainly, I think things like school security and shared services have provided benefits for the township. And I'll just, leave on this last term. Mr. Business Administrator, you're new to the town, and as elected officials and administrators, we all inherit heaping piles of dung from previous administrations. And at some point...
I've used that term before.
Have you? It's actually
maybe
a
a
good
little
term.
more explicit, but continue.
But we have to, deal with those, right? We have to manage through them. So, your comments to some of the residents, a little off-putting, and I'll just, leave you with this. Hubris does breed animus, and people do remember the comments. So thank you.
Lou Valori, 36 Gathering Hill Court. I greatly appreciate all your time and efforts that you're putting in here tonight. You definitely have a hard job to do tonight. I just want to reflect back on a few things. I know that you've been in your leadership positions in this new administration for over a year, and I give you a lot of credit. You really have some tough challenges ahead. But at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision that you have to live with, okay? Just like the previous administrations when they had to make decisions which may have not been the best decisions in the past and even moving forward. But now you have to live with it. I believe that a lot of the residents and the taxpayers here are really speaking from the heart. I'm scribbling down notes here, hearing different folks talk about what's on their mind. I understand that the builder, the Stanbury Group, wants to build. They want to make money. I give them that much credit. They built the plaza in Union Hill Plaza, which was a great site they developed, and they see a piece of property they want to develop and make a profit on. And obviously there's a lot of other groups involved with the unions where they want to have work and everybody wants to benefit and profit. We understand that. At the end of the day, the taxpayers here are just trying to say to you, listen, we wish that they could build a site, 440 units on a small site, which is kind of a gift in their sense because that maximum density of units on a site that large, right? That's 40 apartments per acre, which I don't even think that we even have right now in the town. So I have no problem with building a site. The problem is the pilot. And it's nothing against the builder or the developer. I just wish he had the money. It's just the pilot puts the town into a bad position. And I spoke to a lot of you elected officials here, and I spoke to some of the developers in the past. They're good people. But I think that they did a poor job at trying to sell this. If this was taken into effect a year ago, when the new administration came in and really tried to push this out to the public, I think maybe if you educated them and brought a lot of the facts, I wish you were here a year ago to bring a lot of these facts, you know, people wouldn't be upset or just worried because again, Mr. Guzman, I see him sitting in the audience here. I know in the past, he was a staunch guy sticking up for Sedgefield in the past. He was concerned about Matt Calley. We all know that Matt Calley is going to get developed. There's supposedly 2 restaurants going back there. They want to retrofit a new building. Supposedly Wyndham wants to build. And I remember Mr. Guzman always saying, it's almost city within a city in that area. Now, you're going to have 1515 Route 10, which is going to be a city within a city. So if you have 440 units, we don't know how many students, could be up to 40 to 100. Then, nobody's bringing up the key part of the puzzle here. There's going to be a hotel behind that, okay, which is going to be in Hanover, okay, which they're going to share the same entrance off of Route 10 to go through that area. So I give Chief Miller back there, he's going to have a lot on his mind in regards to guarding another city within a city, because you'll probably have 5,000 people at a time just in that one little corner. To say that there's going to be no traffic is ridiculous. Route 202 is just, you're never going to change it. So to say that the intersection being built, listen, I wish the developer had the $7 million out of his pocket to pay for it. I don't think the tax incentive that the town or the taxpayers are losing, I think it overwhelms them. I wish you could go back to the table to negotiate this. I like the project. We do have COA issues that we have to handle, but at the same time, they are getting a great deal on their COA, because you're not mentioning they're only putting 7.5% of the COA, and the rest of it's going back into that $2.5 million for investments, I guess, for the housing. So needless to say, I wish you were a little bit more out in the open with it, maybe with the developer, because I think the project would be great for the town, but I just don't think this tax, how can I say, them not paying taxes like everybody else in the town, I don't think it helps everyone else out. But at the end of the day, in regard to stacking, the town has historically always had problems with multiple people living in the apartments and even in the houses. So let's be creatures of habit. If you think there's just gonna be 40 children in those 440 units, come on, you gotta be kidding me. There'll be at least 100. Because right now, we have many apartment complexes. I was a former police officer in town. We have major stacking issues still going on in the town. So just really think this out. But again, if you give to this one developer, I'm not saying the pilot, the density, you know there's going to be other developers that are going to want the same density. So in the meantime, you're going to meet the requirements, but I just don't think the pilot is going to be helpful to the school district and all these other concerned citizens that are hardworking taxpayers. And thank you, and I know you have a hard job ahead. Thank you.
Through you, Council President, if I may, to Chairman Valori and the last 2 speakers, I just want to clarify that the concept of the pilot has been discussed by prior administration, prior councils, dating back to April of 2015. In fact, in April of 2015, there was a letter sent to the Township Council from Robert Garofalo, Esquire. Attached to that was a feasibility study and a fiscal impact study prepared by John McDonough Associates, LLC, where the pilot is referenced multiple times and what the financial impact on Parsippany Troy Hills would be. So much so that there is a chart incorporated in that report breaking down what the pilot payments would have looked like back then. Subsequent to that, the tax assessor, Dan Cassis, provided to the former mayor and the former business administrator a breakdown of the tax impact of Stanberry in response to John McDonough's report. The proposal included multiple calculations of what the pilot impact would be, and there was even an article, it was in response to an article that was published in Parsippany Focus. In September of 2015, the Township Council adopted a resolution declaring the site in need of redevelopment. In October of 2019 and November of October 19th, 2015, and on November 9th of 2015, there were meetings between the Township and Stanberry. Signing into those meetings were the former mayor, former administrator, the planner of record at the time, and the former township attorney at one of those meetings. In November of 2015, a revised financial study was provided by John McDonough Associates to the former mayor, the former administrator, the former township attorney, the township planner. The pilot is again referenced in that document, and the breakdown and the chart that I discussed earlier was revised. In December of 2015, there was correspondence between partners in the Stanberry organization with the former administrator, the former mayor, the former borough attorney, the planner, discussing other things, but discussing the fact that the UPS lawsuit, which was happening at the time, may have been holding up the Stanberry project relative to the pilot. In June of 2016, the then Township Council adopted Resolution 2016-126, which retained NW Financial LLC relative to the Stanberry project. NW Financial remains our financial consultant here in the township on this project. The second paragraph of the resolution states, preparation of a financial impact statement and analysis of the real property taxation and/or payments in lieu of taxes thereof to review and supplement the other financial and fiscal impact analysis produced in connection with same. On page 3 of the NW financial proposal, which was attached to that resolution, it stipulated by Mr. Hanley's firm that they would analyze the project to determine that but for a pilot, the project could not be developed. The contract was signed that same day by former Mayor Barbario. In June of 2016, an email was received by the principal of Stanberry to my predecessor confirming that there would be discussion of the pilot at the July 5th, 2016 executive session following a council meeting to discuss Stanberry. That was following the retention of NW Financial. In June of 2016, there's correspondence between the prior township attorney's firm discussing both the UPS and Stanberry pilot agreements. In July of 2016, former mayor, former administrator, former township attorney, and the planner received an aerial rendering of the project along with an attachment which references the pilot program. In July of 2017, the Township Council introduced Ordinance 17-18 approving and adopting the redevelopment plan for Stanberry. The vote in 2017 was 5-0. The tax abatement was laid out in the document. In August of 2017, the Township Council adopted Ordinance 17-18 approving and adopting a redevelopment
plan for Stanberry by a 5-0 vote. The tax abatement is laid out in the document. There was significant discussion at the meeting in public as to the pilot. You can watch both parts 1 and 2 of that meeting online, where the former township attorney, along with the township planner, discusses the pilot at length. In February of 2018, a revised NW financial report was submitted to the township, and in September of 2018, the same night I was hired, the township introduced Resolution 17-18, authorizing the redevelopment agreement for Stanberry by the 4-1 vote. I read this to you because I think it's important to know that this pilot concept, the policy of developing a pilot, has existed and been discussed in the township since 2015. I just think it's very important that we make it clear that there has been a history to this proposal that is before the council tonight. Thank you, Council President.
Council President?
Yes.
May I? With respect to the density, the number of units and the density per acre were set pursuant to the redevelopment plan that was previously adopted by council in 2017. So the density of the project hasn't changed since council took action on the redevelopment plan in 2017.
Actually, it reduced.
With respect to the number of affordable units, the Stanberry project is somewhat unique in that the developer has agreed to provide half the units, which I think is 34, on site, and then to fund a contribution that allows then the township then to be able to fund a market to affordable program out of the Township Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that allows us to actually get credit for some existing rental housing that we have right now that is not subject to any Mount Laurel restriction. The net effect of that is that we actually have to build less new housing in the township. And then there's also an opportunity, I believe, and we'll probably know more about this in the future, probably to actually gain more Mount Laurel credit because of the way the crediting works with respect to existing rental units.
Mr. Lott, to also add that, or clarify really, in December of 2017, the density for the Stanberry project was at 500. That was negotiated down to 441.
Yeah, I think the original proposal, Mayor, that the redeveloper had made was 500. I think the ordinance that they actually introduced set the density at 40 per acre, which is essentially 441.
Well, technically, we're still in open session. Should I make a motion to close?
Second.
Yep. See no one else come forward? Entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
I offer the motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Ms. Grignani.
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy.
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Council President, before we move further on this, while everybody here is concerned about 1515, and we're more concerned about not just 1515, but all of the Fair Housing Council's requirements that we're going to have to meet. Maybe we could ask Leslie to, at this point, give an overview of what's coming down the pike besides 1515 that we have to deal with. Would that be appropriate?
Sure, I don't have an objection to that.
This is just one project. We have an obligation which is going to produce other projects, other developers going to come here under low-income housing requirements. This is just one of them.
And we should be as general as we can because we're still in litigation.
Yeah, we're not going to talk
is-
about name specific
Correct.
projects, but
Right.
just give an overview.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Let me just take this down. As Council mentioned, we are still in negotiations, so I can't get into a lot of detail. But for the past couple of months, or even it seems like almost a year, we've been wrangling with what the township's obligation will be. We've been back and forth with the Fair Share Housing Center, trying to determine what your obligation is. There was a report, or actually a case that came out of Mercer County that set the methodology for all of the municipalities in New Jersey. And that methodology is what's driving what your number is. What the township asked its planner to do was to look at ways to bring down your obligation number. We did that through a vacant land adjustment analysis, which reduced the number. When myself and Ed Snickus was here a couple of months ago, we determined that the realistic number would be somewhere between 800 and 1,000 affordable units. We believe it will be around 867 or 859, I should say, which represent only the affordable units. So in order to get that number of affordable units, you have to build market units with it. We've been approached by many developers who are very interested in being part of the plan. We looked at each of those developers in detail and have discussed them with you. We're trying to find the best plan that works for the township with the least impact, and that proposal will be to you shortly, and which will be shared with the public after you sign off on it. We will have to go to court for a fairness hearing, and the developers involved will have to support and justify their program or their project. And as it's been said previously by some of the council members, the court does not look at the impact on schools. We wish they did, and we wish the legislature would require that as part of the process, but that has no impact from the court's perspective. They are looking at what your obligation is. Every municipality in New Jersey has an obligation. Parsippany is no different. If you fail to put together a plan, the court will do it for you, and the developer will be in the driver's seat. That is why we've been pushing to come up with a reasonable plan that you control and that the developers do not control. So, as I mentioned, there'll be several projects that will be before you that will make up your plan. Stanberry, maybe one of it, is just the first.
Now, would it be, just so that we give it some perspective, if we're required to provide 800 affordable housing units in Parsippany, and they apply the builder's remedy, 4-to-1, then that would be 3,200 regular priced apartments to subsidize the 800 affordable apartments. That's a total of roughly 4,000 apartments, new apartments, that we're going to have to come up with.
If that's not the number, though, it won't be as high, but yes.
I'm just giving a ballpark
Yes.
here. These are the kinds of numbers we're looking at.
Right.
8,000, and the courts also do not care how many apartments we already have. I've been through that with the courts for 30 years.
Right, and
they
which-
don't care what we already have. It's their future needs, not what we've already provided.
And one way to keep the numbers down from having to build new units, we are pushing a market to affordable program, which comes from funding from your trust fund, which will allow you to take market units that currently exist and mark them down for affordable units. So that's a big part of the plan that we're looking at, so that you don't have to create new units. You can try to take some of the units that currently exist and mark them down. That will reduce your number also.
Thank you.
And before you go, Ms. London?
Yes.
Why don't you just remind the public where we started with the Fair Share Center in terms of what was proposed as the township's need?
It's been a while, but I believe the affordable unit number was in the thousands. I believe it was 2,000 or 3,000.
I believe it was about 2,400.
Mr. Snikes is here.
2,300, I recall.
Right.
2,400. Right, so the township took the right step forward in doing the vacant land adjustment. That helped us tremendously by looking at what we can actually build in the township, and that was a great move right there. So that significantly reduced your number, And as I mentioned, the Market to Affordable program. We were looking also at group homes and other aspects so that we don't have to build as many units towards that number.
Yeah, group homes, you get 2 to 1.
Yes.
Credits for two units for each one home.
Right, and there's other crediting that we were able to apply to bring the number down. And it's a statewide issue. I think it's been mentioned already, the legislature has failed to act, so it's in the courts. And the courts are being very aggressive. Fair share housing is being very aggressive. Towns who do not act are being sued. And a main example is South Brunswick. The court felt that they were not doing what they were supposed to do, and the court took away the power from the township council and the planning board and gave it to the court and the court master and the developers. So they are the ones determining what projects will be in the plan. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in the driver's seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one other comment, Mr. President. This was actually touched on several times during the course of the public hearing, but there is no precedential effect with respect to pilot. Every project, all right, is going to be assessed on its own merits. And just because we have decided, that's what council ultimately decides tonight, to grant a pilot, it doesn't bind the township to, in the future, having to grant pilots to other developers. The financing of each project is unique. The circumstances with respect to the Stanbury project, I think, are also somewhat unique.
Have there been examples of developers who have come since this project's proposal that have asked for pilots, and what has been the answer?
I've sat in on several meetings where developers have asked about the availability of pilot, and they've been told no.
Thank you.
Now, ultimately, that determination rests with council.
Thank you.
I think that's an important factor. I've been in the negotiations with all of the developers, and every one of them asked for a pilot, and they were told no. And they had to do 20% also. They came in saying 10%, 15%. It's 20% for every developer, and we made it very, very clear, no pilot.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's finish this ordinance. Whereas the above ordinance was read in title on second reading and a hearing held thereon, now therefore be it resolved that said ordinance be passed on final reading, and that a notice of final passage of said ordinance be published in the newspaper according to law. Motion to approve the above resolution.
Second.
Where's our
Our clerk. I guess I could call the roll.
Here he is.
Roll call. We need a roll call.
I was almost ready to make myself clerk.
Clay, you have a motion by Mr. DePiero and a second by Mrs. Peterson.
Okay, so, a motion by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero.
All right, I have a statement to read before I vote. The Stanbury proposal at 1515 Route 10 is, overall, an attractive development with a mix of residential, retail, and open space. The majority of the proposed 441 apartments are projected to be studio and one-bedroom, which will reduce the number of school children. The roughly $7 million provision for an access road from Dryden Way to Johnson Road will provide an alternate route to the 1515 tract, Delta Dental, the Octagon Building, and others heading in that direction to avoid the 202 and 10 intersection. This traffic improvement, privately funded by the developer, is the only way that this improvement will be made. This project also helps the township with its affordable housing obligation. The project will provide 34 moderate and low-income apartments and pay an excess of $3.3 million to the township's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Our local unions will be involved in most of this project, generating revenue for our workers. Also, the pilot financial agreement should increase Parsippany's tax revenues. Although I am still not comfortable with a pilot project that includes apartments, I am less comfortable with the consequences if this project is defeated. The access road will not be built. The proposed 441 studio and one-bedroom apartments could approach 800 3- and 4-bedroom apartments, producing many more school children. Increased traffic on routes 10 and 202. The aesthetics of the property will suffer. Our unions will not get the work. All things considered, I have to support this project. I vote yes.
Ms. Grignani?
I also have a statement. 1515 is the first project in Parsippany that proposes a mixed-use development. It is assisting Parsippany with our core obligations. The Kelly Act relieves the township of snow and ice removal, road improvements, and streetlights. The issue of utmost concern is the pilot program. I have been informed by legal counsel and this administration that there is no legal basis for other developers to receive a pilot. We would not be setting a precedent. A formal request was sent to the Morris County Administrator, Mr. Bonanni, for a non-resource development area bond issued by the Morris County Development Authority and must be approved by the freeholders of Morris County. This bond will bring relief to Route 10 and 202 by providing a roundabout to Dryden Way. On January 28, 2019, the Parsippany Council and Township received a letter from Day Pitney attorney Craig Gianetti, counsel for 1515, with an alternative plan for 800 units. This plan was also filed with the courts. It may be said this is just a tactic. I, for one, did not want the court dictating to Parsippany our affordable housing obligations and ongoing litigation. Mentioned in Parsippany Focus recently, by removing 380,000 square feet of office space, it lowers our vacancy rate from 20% to 2%. Lastly, I have spoken tonight with the attorney for 1515, Mr. Perlman, and I have asked for a letter stating in simple language that the rear and side easement roads dedicated to Parsippany will be maintained by Stanberry for the life of the pilot. And I have been assured by Mr. Perlman that that letter would be forthcoming. Based on the above, I will also be voting yes for this project.
Ms. McCarthy?
I think that, as I've said repeatedly, that this is a forward looking concept. I think it's going to be a quality project. And I think the builder is dedicated to making it a quality project. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm also encouraged that Council Member Peterson has been working with them and coming up with ideas that she feels would benefit the town. So I think that's all very positive. Again, you can only deal with the facts that are before us. So, as I've said repeatedly, and I hope for the last time, I've made my feelings known about the financial agreement. I stand by that information that I've provided and stated here at the council meetings, so I vote no.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Okay, before I vote, in meetings that we had with the developer to get a further explanation of the project, at that time, and I've discussed that with them, and I wish I would have been made more aware to the public a long time ago. The main need for the pilot is for the road improvements. If it were not for the road improvements, to keep a lot of the traffic at the very end of Parsippany, towards the Hanover area, over that way, and off of 202, the developer would not need the pilot. The main reason for the pilot is for the $6.5–7 million worth of road improvements. Again, it was mentioned the Kelly Act. We're not going to have to do snow removal, garbage. We're not going to be responsible for that for the life of the pilot. We've been given legal advice and legal opinion, I will say, that this in no way, shape, or form serves as a precedent for pilot programs from other developers. And I believe that this is the least impactful. Am I in favor of a pilot? No. Do I think it's a great project? Yes. Do I like the pilot? No, I don't. But if you have to weigh the lesser of the two evils, the pilot program and this development, it's the only way this can be built. I vote yes.
Okay, so for the record, so we can just clarify the record, I'm going to go through this vote one more time. We just want yes or no's, just for the record, since this is a very heavy vote. So once again, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
No.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
The motion passes 4 yeses to 1 no vote.
7, 9,
Page 6, 9, yep.
Yep, Resolution R 2019-066, resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, authorizing award of a contract to A.C. Schultz in Inc. for rehabilitation services for wells 12, 17, and 19. Motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 2019-67, resolution of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills in the County of Morris, making application to the Morris County Improvement Authority for the issuance of non-recourse bonds under the redevelopment area bond financing law in connection with the redevelopment of the certain property within the township identified as Block 200, Lot 1.2. Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Mr. DePiero. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 2019-068. Before I read the resolution, I again am going to repeat what I started. I apologize. I was informed that there were inquiries to our township from Parsippany residents working as federal employees during the budget impasse. They were concerned about their interest charged on property taxes being paid late. The resolution I asked Mr. Lott to prepare is a result of a bill passed waiving delinquent property taxes. It is effective immediately and is retroactive to December 22, 2018. I want to thank Mr. Lott for having this resolution before us this evening.
Oh, you're very welcome. Just one legal clarification. It becomes effective once the governor signs the law.
Yes.
And as of about noontime today, he had not yet taken action on it.
Well, hopefully he will
Do you have any
it
idea
soon.
how many employees that involves?
I just was informed of several. I don't know, Mr. Kazmark, did you have
you wouldn't
many
know
more
that.
employees?
Yeah, I don't know how many federal employees reside in the township, but
Right.
if they did come here in the event of a government shutdown, they would just have to furnish proof that they were actually federal government employees who were affected by the shutdown,
Yes.
and then we would treat them accordingly.
Thank you.
Resolution 2019-068, resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, waiving interest on delinquent property taxes for certain taxpayers affected by a full or partial shutdown of government operations due to a federal budget impasse. Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Resolution made by Ms. Grignani, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call, Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Consent agenda. Be it resolved, all items listed with an asterisk are routine and non-controversial by the Township Council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. DePiero, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
CFO Ann Cucci recommends authorization for payment. Authorization payment of February 22nd, 2019, regular and miscellaneous payroll estimated at $1,800,000. Payment of the bills from voucher list 2/4/2019 through 2/17/2019 at $2,627,952.02. Motion to approve the authorization of payment for the above.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Peterson. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Executive session resolution. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Council is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, and whereas the Township Council wishes to discuss litigation, affordable housing, personnel matters, and whereas minutes will be kept, and once the matter involving the confidentiality of the above no longer requires confidentiality, the minutes can be made public. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills that the public be excluded from this meeting. Motion to adjourn into closed session.
Through you, Council President, I can withdraw the personnel matter as it was previously approved as part of the consent agenda. So we will only be going back to talk about affordable housing.
Okay.
Motion?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Peterson, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call. Mr. DePiero?
Yes.
Ms. Grignani?
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Carriffy?
Yes.
We're
There'll
going to
be,
adjourn